It's November 27th, approximately, I think it's 1 o'clock. I'm sick. I'm on day 2 of being sick. It's horrible. Yeah, I don't like being sick. I don't have much energy to do anything. I didn't do too much yesterday. I don't really feel like I'm not gonna be able to do too much today. Just don't really feel like I got the strength or the energy right now. Got a head cold. My sinuses are tore up. Keeps jumping from both nostrils to both nostrils, back and forth. Body feels a lot better today. It was really aching there yesterday, but today it ain't as bad as the achiness. But yeah, I wanted to tune in and just let you guys know how the ice skating went. If you didn't see it live on Papa Letter's Facebook, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. I've never ice skated before. Big Mike never ice skated before, so to get out there and actually put those ice skates on and hit the skating rink was to me quite the accomplishment. I believe in sobriety, that it's great to go out of your comfort zone. It's very healthy to do. And it was like learn how to walk all over again. I felt like it was kind of a new beginning. I did fall one time, like I was saying that Papa said that I was going to fall, and I didn't think I was going to, but I did. I was kind of screwing off when I did it, but yeah, I would like to try it again. I felt I did awesome. At first it took me a little bit to get used to it, but within a few minutes I felt like I went from walking to running. I was trying to go backwards. I actually went over and asked this guy, how how are you doing that? And he kind of described it to me, but like the more I tried it, I would try to go backwards, but I would be moving forward. But yeah, kind of a new breath of fresh air in the aspect of learning how to ice skate. I kind of want to share a story. I got so many. I kind of want to give a ghost story today, which I got a lot of those. For some reason it feels like I've had ghosts around me. I wouldn't say too much demons, but a lot of ghosts. Maybe they are demons. I don't know. I don't know too much about the spiritual world, but I am a strong believer of it. The one that I'm going to share today is my son Blake must have been about probably 3, maybe 4. And anyways, me and his mom, we were living in a 2-bedroom house up in Forks, and she was always into like Sylvia Brown, and was always reading her books and watching things on TV, and so she kind of had her head wrapped around the spiritual life, spiritual world, however you say it. Blake had a lot of toys growing up. That was one thing we did, is we really like to spoil our children. Maybe that's not a good thing, but I really enjoyed it. At times I feel like I bought a lot of the wrong toys at the wrong stages of my son's life, but it is what it is. But anyway, so the story goes that in this 3-bedroom house, you would walk in the front door, and then it would be the living room, and then you would make a corner, and there was a little hallway, and then there was the bathroom, and then there was Blake's room, and then Amanda and my room, and if you didn't turn left into that little hallway, you just kept going. You went out into the kitchen, and then we had Blake's playroom off the kitchen, and this happened for quite a while. You know, we would be laying in bed, we would be sleeping, and we would wake up to Blake's toys going off, and Blake slept with us. You know, he hardly, rarely, ever did not sleep with us. And these are toys that you would have to touch. You'd have to push buttons to make activate, to do their thing. And I was logging at the time. You know, I would have to get up at, you know, sometimes 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock, depending on what time of year. And I want to say that this was in the summertime, so I was getting up extremely early. And one night, there was one in particular that always went off, and it was, to me, it was more of the creepier one of all the toys that would go off. It was part of a racetrack, and it was a pyramid, and it had a mummy on top of the pyramid, and when you push the button, it would say, "Who dare wake the mummy?" and his eyes would be flashing red, and that one was creeped me out the most. Well, one night I want to say it was Amanda that told me to go take all the batteries out of the toys. So I got up in the middle of the night, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and ran over there. And I want to say I took the batteries out of just a couple of them. I didn't take them out of all of them, but that mummy one was definitely one that I took the batteries out of, because it was scary. It was freaky. So I took the batteries out of it, ended up going to sleep. Well, the next, I want to say it was like a couple days after that, there was no interruptions while we were sleeping, and like 2 nights later, we're laying there in bed sleeping, and all of a sudden that toy goes off, and it was the pyramided mummy, and it starts going off, "Who dares wakes the mummy?" And I roll over in bed, and Amanda opens her eyes, and she rolls over and she looks at me, and we were both looking at each other with straight face, you know, like, "You got to be kidding me." And she asked me, she said, "Christopher," she's like, "Did you take the batteries out of it?" I said, "Yeah, I took the batteries out of it." And she's like, "Are you sure?" I said, I'm positive." And I ended up rolling out of bed, and I went into Blake's bedroom there, and it was in his, I had a football toy box when I was growing up, and I ended up giving it to Blake. Oh no, wait, that was in his playroom. It was in a little wooden box that he had some toys in, is where that mummy deal was. And I come into the bedroom, and I remember it was dark in there, and I looked in there, and I could see the redness of the mummy's eyes flashing in that wooden box. And I walked over there, or I turned the light on. I walked over there, and I ended up grabbing it, and I spun it around and looked underneath, and the back where it's got the little, you take a Phillips screwdriver and you pull the screw out. Well, that was off. There was no AA batteries in it. And as soon as I got up to it, it had stopped. And yeah, that was creepy. But what I forgot to say in all this is that when you got a spirit, or you got a ghost that is in your house, that is letting you know that they're there, that they're present, they like to move in a triangular, like one room to another, and that's what this spirit would do. It'd go from Blake's room to his playroom, to the living room. So it would work in that triangular formation, or whatever, however you want to say it. Like I said, I don't know too much about the spiritual world, but after a lot of that, I kind of got intrigued into reading a little bit about Sylvia Browne and what she had to say about it, because it just really boosted my curiosity, and we ended up saying some things out loud a few days after the last incident with the mummy. Amanda came up with a game plan, and we said some things, and to let it go, to let it, realize it's stuck in that limbo, that that it needs to go to the light, that it was confused, and it needed to move on. And it worked, I'm not gonna lie. After that particular spirit had left the house. It was gone, never to come back and do the things that it had been doing. I've always, that same house, we had a Kodak camera, and I remember around the same time, I would personally, I'd be going around the house and I would be taking pictures of everything, and then then I would sit there and I would go through the pictures, and some of the images that I would catch in some of the pictures were absolutely amazing. There were faces and weird things like that. I need to find out where that camera's at, because a lot of them should still be on there, and I would like to look at them. But what other story would I want to give you? I should give you a hunting story. I could tell the story when I killed the biggest bull that I ever shot with my bow. It scored 266 and 6/8. It's a dandy. It's a big 5-point, perfectly symmetrical. That's what makes him score so well. It was perfectly symmetrical, real wide. I can't remember what year it was, 2014, 2015 bow season here in Western Washington, and Gary and I had been out every chance that we had, keeping tabs on certain areas that we hunt, and push the elk into a clear, or push the elk out of the clear cuts, and other bow hunters would see them. And we were actually in town. We had already been out for a couple hours that morning, and we come back to town, and then we caught wind that somebody had seen that day one of the biggest bulls that they'd ever seen in their entire life. And so we decided, well, shoot, we need to go out there, because anytime that you're not out, in the woods, you're not out there keeping track of your hunting grounds, that you could slip and miss the opportunity to see an animal. So we decided, well, let's turn the burn and let's go back out there. So we ended up fueling up, getting some munchies, getting some energy drinks, got some snooze, and got some coffee, and we ended up jumping in my pickup. It was one I had. What's up, Sweet Tea? Are you on break? Yeah. Ended up, here's Sweet Tea. He's on break right now. Ended up jumping in my Toyota. It was when I had my Toyota Tacoma, and we flew back out there. Ended up driving up to this three-way intersection, and I'll never forget this. This is when I first laid eyes on him, and this was like 4 days before bow season even opened. And I pulled up to that three-way intersection. I had stopped, and I looked through the passenger window past Gary. We're like, elk, and that bull was the first one that I'd seen. He was in the ditch, and he was assed away, so all that we could see was his butt, and he picked his head up, and he turned his head, and when he picked his head up, he didn't even pick his head all the way up, he just turned it sideways and looked down the road at us. And I had looked at Gary, and I said, are you ready? And he was like, yeah, and I ended up turning the wheel and just hammered on it, and we were on that bull like the snap of a finger. I mean, we were on top of him before he even got out of the ditch. I mean, that's how fast we covered that ground in that pickup. And it was a hot summer that year. We were in a drought. There was only one mud puddle on this whole road system, and it happened to be on that road. And I'll never forget when that bull come out in the road, and he was running. He had like 6 cows with him and 2 calves, and he was right in the middle of amongst those elk. And when he went by the mud hole, we come through there. When we hit it, it was on my passenger right side of my truck, and when I hit that mud hole, it just kicked the mud up in the air, and it hit my windshield. And when it hit my windshield, it had covered Gary's part of the windshield. Like, I could still see and Gary had his phone out, and he was taking pictures and videos, and he's like, windshield wipers, windshield wipers. So I hit my windshield wipers and throwing mud all over the windshield, and Gary snapped some really cool pictures of this bull with these cows and calves. You know, we ended up taking the pictures and blew them up, and we all still got them. We herded them down the road for about 100 yards. We ended up turning, and they broke out into a wide open clear cut. And I ended up slamming on my brakes, and they were running across the clear cut. And I remember I had my cow call hanging from my rearview mirror, and I don't know what happened to that cow call. It was one of my favorite cow calls too. And I remember I grabbed a hold of it and I just squealed on it, and it got that bull to stop. That bull stopped, spun around, and I remember I hit that cow call again, and that bull turned around and started walking at my truck after what had just happened. I mean, we came down there, herded him down the road, and ran him that far, and you know, I blew on a cow call and he was coming towards my pickup. You know, that just shows when they're in the rut, they're not in the right state of mind. You know, and they ended up turning and burning. They left. Gary and I were all jacked. We could not wait for bow season to start. And hey, do you want to do me a favor when you get back, or when you get off work? Will you pick me up a can of wintergreen? Will you pick me up a can of wintergreen and I'll pay you when you get here? Okay.
I don't have my money on that.
Go here. Well, here.
Did you get a hold of your attorney?
I did. He said he just rescheduled it for the day of my court appointment. Which that's Thursday. Oh, this head sucks.
Alright. Ken?
Huh?
Ken?
Yeah.
Alright.
You're a peach, sweet tea. But so we could not wait for bow season to come around, and bow season came. We had hunted hard the first 3 days. We hunted hard, and couldn't come up with those elk. You know, they went MIA, and I remember one night we were sitting there. It must have been the third day of hunting, and that third night we were sitting there at Gary's house, because that's something that we always did. You know, we always, you know, we'd hunt all day from daylight to dark, and when we would be done, we would lose a lot of sleep, you know, because we'd be up talking and preparing and you know, getting ready for the next day. And I remember that night before I had shot that bull, we were over at Gary's house hanging out and discussing what exactly we were going to do, and we wanted to use this drought, this weather, to our advantage, and there was only so many water sources in the area, and so we drew out a game plan. And that next morning we ended up going out, and we had parked and got it all geared up, and we'd only been gone from the truck for maybe an hour and a half, and we got set up. You know, like when I say, I told you before, like when we set up we're in a position to where we can call something in or locate a bull, or, you know, we're at a real good advantage point on hunting, on elk and what have you. But we had set up, and I remember gave one bugle off my Mac Daddy, hashtag not sponsored by Mac Daddy, and Gary hit his cow call like 2 or 3 times, and that bull blew up. I mean, he was close. We were in his vulnerable spot. He was within a couple 100 yards, I bet, when he first bugled, and it wasn't even bugle, it just gave that Rah! And I remember me and Gary looked at each other, we're like, oh yeah, and we kept, you know, bugling and cow calling, and he just kept getting closer, and then all of a sudden he just shut up. And we were like, what the heck? You know, we're blowing on cow calls and hitting our bugle, and he was done. And I bet you about 3 minutes went by. And 3 minutes when you're out in the woods is quite quite a long time, you know, especially after experiencing something like that. And all of a sudden, he gave a bugle, and he was up above us. And I remember I looked at Gary, and I told Gary, I said, we need to Will Primos it up to the top of that hill. Hashtag, not sponsored by Will Primos, but I really have a lot of love for Will Primos and know what he does as far as hunting and stuff. So we ended up grabbing our backpacks, and we ran up that hill to the top of that ridge. And when we got up to the top of the ridge, I want to say Gary ended up hitting his cow call when we hit the top of that ridge, and that bull blew up 50 yards in front of us. And I looked at Gary and I said, I'm slipping in. And he's like, all right. So I remember I just slipped my backpack off and started to go for where he gave that bugle at. And I remember I was going through the forest, and I went about 30 yards, and there was some dog hair. We got through the dog hair, and then it kind of opened up. And right on top of that knob, there was some blowdown right there from where the weather hits it real hard. And I remember I looked over the top of these blowdown trees, and I could just see the tops of his Ys, his horns just spinning back and forth like this. And he was bugling. And I thought, shoot, how am I going to make this happen, you know? Because all I could see was just the tops of his horns and his head swinging, or his horns swinging like this. Well, the blowdown was laying like this, and there was one blowdown tree that was laid like this. And there was a stump next to the root ball of that blowdown tree that laid like that. Well, I ended up ranging the tree that was right next to that bull and swinging his head back and forth, and it was 35 yards. So I ended up jumping on top of this nursing stump, which was a nurse stump. It was an old growth stump that had been logged before, and there was a hemlock tree growing out of it. And I had got on top of that stump, and I could just see just right over the top of that blowdown. And I remember I had an arrow knocked, and I ended up putting my release onto my D-loop. And as I was pulling back to get into full draw, I get about halfway to full draw, and all of a sudden I fall through that stump up to my waist. And I think to myself, you gotta be kidding me. And as all this movement and motion goes on, that elk sees it, and he turns and he just jumps like 3 jumps, and then he stops, and I climb up out of that hole, and then that's when I see that blowdown tree, and I jump on top of it, and I run right up to the point of it, and I'm past that blowdown. Now I'm looking right down on top of this bull, and I didn't even bring my rangefinder up because I knew that he was how much distance I moved from when I had ranged him and how much distance he moved. I knew it was still 35 yards. And so I ended up putting my release back onto my D-loop. And if you don't know what a D-loop is, it's a string that's attached to your bowstring to put your release into, so you're not just connecting it straight to your bowstring. I hooked it all up, pulled back, got to full draw, and I did not have a shot, you know. That bull, he could have moved any direction. If he would have went left, if he would have went straight, I would have never had a shot at him. But if he was to turn right, that's when he would walk into a shooting lane that I had. And he was behind 2 hemlock trees. All that I could see at that time was his hind quarter and half his horn, and that's about it, maybe a little bit of his neck. And if he was to turn right and walked into and I had about a shooting lane about the size of a box target that us bow hunters practice on. And I was in full draw for what seemed like forever, and we were having a stare down, this bull and I were, and I just kept running through my mind like, all right, if you go right, I got you. If you go left or you go straight, then I don't have no shot on you. And eventually he made his move, and he started to walk. And when he walked, he turned into that right shooting lane, the only shooting lane that I had. And he was quartering away from me. And I remember when he come into that shooting lane, I shot for about the 4th rib back as he was quartering away from me when I touched my arrow off. and I ended up hitting him about the fourth rib. Arrow had come up and hit his off shoulder. I remember he kicked, and I didn't realize how big this bull was. You know, being caught up in the moment, being in dark timber. I knew he was a legal bull, and I didn't realize how big he was until after I'd shot him, because he come out into the opening, and he turned to his left, and when he turned to his left and he did his jump over a log, that's when I looked at him and was like, holy smokes. You know, I could see the big hump in his back, and got a full view of him, you know. Did I know it was the one that we had taken pictures before? No, I did not know that. I figured that bull was still out there running around with the cows that he had. But what ended up happening was we ended up going. We had searched for that bull for about 4 hours, and we ended up losing blood. This is one of the saddest stories ever, you know. But as bow hunters, you know, I mean, I don't want to feel like I'm giving bow hunters a bad name or anything like that, but shot placement is key. I feel that the shot placement that I put on this bull was nothing next to it was perfect, you know. But the will for an elk to survive is absolutely amazing, you know. I think I hit one lung high. Make a long story short, we didn't find that bull that day. We didn't find that bull the next day. We had looked for 2 or 3 days, and we were almost burning up our whole season looking for this elk. And I had that night, or that day that I'd shot that bull, you can ask Gary, I was so upset with myself, you know, because the year before I had shot that bull, or 2 years before, or whatever, I'd shot that 4x5, you know, the story that I gave you guys about Sasquatch too, that was the same bow that I shot that elk with. And then this big bull, I had shot it with that bow. It was a Bowtech tribute, was the bow. Hashtag not sponsored by Bowtech. It's a beautiful bow. I mean, Bowtechs are nice bows. You know, I don't. It is what it is. You know. But I was throwing that bow down the road. I was kicking that bow down the road. I think I slammed it up against a tree a time or two. You know, and Gary was just like, Christopher, calm down. You know, if I realized you were going to do that to that bow, he's like, I would have bought it from you. And I told him, you don't want this curse. But anyway, so 8 days later, we're out there, and we're about a mile and a half, maybe, roughly, from where I had shot that bull. And we're walking, and this crow is going off up on this hill, and I'll never forget it. Gary looks at me, and he's like, hey. He's like, you hear that? I was like, yeah, there's a crow up there. He's like, yeah. He goes, do you know? He goes, one thing I've noticed, he's like, oh, around here, he's like, the crows don't hang around in one spot very long. I was like, yeah. And he's like, and that one's been up there for the last half an hour just crowing by himself, crowing. I thought, you know what, you're right. I said, let's go up there. So he's like, all right. So we ended up going off the road, and we went up through the brush, and we, at that point, the crow had stopped. And we got up there, and the wind, I ended up getting the wind in my favor, and we all split. And I just kept going with the wind in my nose, and kind of on an off direction of the path that Gary went. And all of a sudden, that's when I ended up smelling it. It's like, ooh, I smell it. So I just kept going straight for that smell. And I come through some little fir trees, and I remember there was kind of an opening with some slough brush and stuff there. And I remember I looked, and that's when I seen one of his horns sticking up out of the slough brush. And I yelled to Gary, hey, I found him. And walked over there, and there he was. You know, he had made it a mile and a half from where I'd shot him. you know, and had ended up dying. You know, I ended up eating my tag that year. I didn't shoot another bull. I had all the time in the world to go out and to shoot another bull. But as a bow hunter, I felt, you know, that me shooting that elk and that elk getting away and then end up finding it, that there was nothing better to do as a bow hunter but to notch my tag and put it on that elk, you know, because that elk deserved it, you know, even though I didn't get to eat them, because that's one, I mean, not only being out there for the experience, I do love elk meat. That was hard to stomach, you know, that elk and that 4x5 are the only two elk that have gotten away from me like that, you know, and then end up being able to find them both is absolutely a miracle. We ended up, I couldn't even hardly get in there. I mean, I have kind of a weak stomach when it comes to that kind of stuff there, and Gary's like, get in there, I'll take a couple pictures of you, and I had ate a blueberry pie, whatever those little pies are. I had a couple of those that morning on the way out there, and man, I ain't gonna lie, when I got in there for that picture, I was I was puking up coffee, puking up that berry pie. It was horrible, you know. I tip my hat, and I cannot thank Gary enough for getting in there and cutting the head off that animal, because I don't know if I could have did it. I would have come back with rope and tied it up, and would have came back a couple years later after the animals had devoured it, and it would have just been bones left, you know. We ended up, Gary got the head cut off of it, and we ended up packing it out of there, and we were done for the day, you know. That's bow hunting. All of us go through it one time or another. Sometimes a couple of us go through it a couple times in our lifetime. You know, but that's what makes hunting fun. It's just part of the game. You know, you gotta play your cards the way that they're dealt to you, and keep pushing forward no matter if things like that happen. You know. I don't feel like I give bow hunting a bad name. I don't, you know, because it is what it is. For some reason, God made those kind of situations happen to me for reasonings I really don't know. But all I can do is embrace it and take them for what they are. Yeah, the past 2 years I haven't been out hunting. You know, I really need to. Well, I have, but I haven't been out there hunting for myself. I went out with Edwin, and he successfully shot that 4-point. Went out with Arch, he successfully shot a spike. You know, besides that, that's the only hunting I really did this year. And hunting's my life. I really enjoy it, and at times I don't even know if I even feel like even picking my bow back up anymore. You know, I mean, I'll still go out there and hunt, but I don't know if I really even want to hunt for myself, as weird as it sounds. I would like to be a part of other people hunting. You know, I like I said, that's one of the biggest things that I love about hunting. It's not always being the one that shoots the animals, but just being a part of the hunt and the encounters. You know, there's nothing more breathtaking than being within feet of a screaming Roosevelt bull elk. You know, which I've had a lot of those encounters over the years. There's only one other thing in this world that takes my breath away more than that, and I'll touch base with that later, but trying to think of another story I want to give you guys. Should give you one from when I was a kid. Well, one thing we used to like to do when I was growing up is I grew up on the Salt Lake River, and it was literally in my backyard, and us neighborhood kids during the summertime, we would get together, and we would go down the trail down to the river, and we had all kinds of room down there to move around, and we would flip rocks, and we would collect crawdads. And what we would do with these crawdads is we would make little spots for them in the water that they couldn't get out of, and we would collect them. And as soon as that we would fill our little spot full of however many we wanted to find, then we would have um, crawdad battles is what we called it, and those were fun times. You know, it'd be kind of like dogfighting, I guess. I mean, you get your crawdads, you know, together, and then you'd take turns. Like if your crawdad won, and you keep having that crawdad push forward. And I remember one time I found the biggest crawdad in the Salt Lake River, and it was a brute. I mean, it was all of probably 12 inches. I mean, 12 inches. He was a stud. He had one pincher, one great big pincher on him. His other pincher had been ripped off. When it come to battling, he didn't do very good because he only had one pincher. We used to eat a lot of crawdads growing up. You know, we had a fire pit in the backyard that looked over the Salt Lake River that my dad had put in, and we would go down and we'd collect crawdads in little butter containers, and we would bring them up. I'd take them out of the same stack of the butter containers that my dad would save for the story that I wrote in my book about the bee's nest, the yellow jackets. And we'd come back from when we would get the crawdads. We'd come back up to the fire pit there, and we would make a fire, and we would cook them, and we would eat them. You know, put some Johnnies on them, put some salt and pepper on them, or whatever you wanted to, whatever your flavor was. And you know, we kept doing that up to just a couple years ago. You know, I think that's one thing. Growing up out here on the Olympic Peninsula, that's one thing that I think that, you know, I've done it with my kids, so they were a part of it. My dad did it with me, you know, so carrying on that kind of, I wouldn't really call it a tradition, but it's something that we do out here on the Olympic Peninsula. Oh, I feel like crap. I'm not gonna lie. I feel horrible. My head feels like it's gonna explode. I'm gaining my sinuses back right now. Ugh. Dude, we were crazy kids growing up on Salmon Drive. We used to have rock wars, BB gun wars. We used to do things called missions. You know, we'd go run around. We would go run around our block, and we would take things out of people's yards, and we would put them in other people's yards. We would replace their yard ornaments, you know, and they would get mad. You know, it would be funny, especially when we would, you know, we would do that late at night, and then the next day we'd be walking around the block, and you'd see the neighbors over there talking to each other when they'd be moving their stuff back into their yards. You know, and then they would look at us walking down the street, and you know, they had to have known it was us. I mean, there was quite a few of us growing up down there, and the age differences were, you know, there was a lot my age, there was a few older. There was a lot of stuff that the older boys did that they did blame on me, you know, and you guys know who you are, and you guys know what you guys did, and the crap that you guys try to blame on me, you know, shame on you guys for all that, you know, but it is what it is. You guys weren't fooling anybody because everybody knew damn well and right it was you guys. Yeah, you guys look like the flipping idiots, but you know, it is what it is. I ain't holding no resentment, you know. It's just, it's water under the bridge for me. Yeah. So I've been writing this book. I think I'm 6 or 7 chapters into it right now. I've been doing a lot lately, you know. And I got to keep busy. You know, I can't stop, you know, being a recovering alcoholic addict, you know, I think the more I keep going, the more
I wouldn't say juggle, but just keep focused on one thing and then kind of put that down and, do something over here for a little bit. It's been helping. And like I said, doing this type of stuff right here, talking really helps too, because it's a therapeutic, you know. When I was talking about my recovery the first go around, and I was tipping my hat and saying that, the prosecuting attorney helped change my life or save my life, and the judge helped save my life. Who really helped save my life was my counselor, along with myself, but my counselor, he did so much for me, and I went to Cedar Grove, hashtag not sponsored by Cedar Grove, but I went to Cedar Grove Counseling and went through it with Gil Orr. And, Gil, I have so much love for that guy. I really do. When I had first went in there and sat down with him and had my evaluation, I remember, I could feel how he felt. And when he first met me, he said he couldn't help me. There's nothing I can do for that guy. And I know why he said what he said. Because of the person that I was. And Jennifer, which worked for Gil, told Gil that you can't pick and choose who you help. You have to help every addict and alcoholic that walks in that door. That's your profession, that's your job. And he did it, I don't think he realized how ready and willing I was at that time. And I was. When I got into recovery my first go-around, I jumped in with both feet. I was not hesitant. I wanted to change my life. And with his help, and his guidance and his patience and his lectures, and him helping to rewire my brain, he's really who helped. He's really who saved my life. Gil, I love you to death. I really appreciate everything that you did for me. I feel you gave me that second breath of air when I felt like I was drowning, I've working that whole 12-step program to a T. I'm not holding anything back. I tip my hat to my sponsor, Terry. I love you with all my heart. And everything that, you had done for me. And the long talks and the, just everything that it took for you to help me get through my steps, We laughed and cried. But that's part of recovery. I can sit here right now and I can shed a tear, and these are happy tears. These are feelings that I'm feeling right now. That as a human, God wants us to feel. The feelings that for so many years of my life that I would numb through alcohol and drugs. Sober life is a great life. It's hard. It's gonna be hard for the rest of my life. It's gonna get easier. It will, especially with a good support group and good friends. Like I just got a new phone number, and I've only given it out to a couple people. I don't plan on giving it out to very many people. I don't. I don't really care for too many people to have my number. You know, I've always said that having too many people in your life, too many people cause too much bullshit, and that's one thing I don't like being a part of is too much bullshit. You know, that's why, you know, over the years that, I mean, even that my first go in recovery, I had people ask me, where the hell you been, blah, blah. You know, I've been underground. I wouldn't say isolated, but I just really watch who I put myself around, because, you know, it watch who I put myself around and keeps me out of effed up predicaments, you know. Just gotta keep focusing on myself and doing things that make me happy, and not being more of a leader than a follower. You know, my dad always drove that into my head, be a leader, not a follower. You know, and I had tried to do that my whole life. You know, like last night I ended up calling some of my family members to let them know that I had got a new number. You know, first I called my son, chit-chatted with him for a little bit. My daughter was sleeping, so I didn't get to talk to her. Then I ended up calling my dad, which it was nice to talk to my dad, and his wife Carla for a short period of time. Then I tried calling my sister Krista, and she didn't pick up, so I just left her a message, and I called Shiloh, let her know that I got a new number, and then I ended up calling Kim, and Kim was the longest one I talked on the phone with, you know, and me and Kim laughed about it. We were on the phone for almost an hour last night talking, and, you know, we talked a lot about our kids, you know, Keaton and Carson, which they're little studs when it comes to sports, and that's what we talked a lot about was what they had going on and the past and present in their sports. And, if I talked to Krista, you know, on the phone, I talked to her for quite a while, but I feel more of a connection to Kim through her kids, because I played sports and I can relate to a lot of the things that what's going on in their lives, you know. But it was, you know, after everything I've been through the last few parts of my month, or the past few months of my life, or past year, you know, I kind of shut my family out in that last relapse, you know. I was making so many wrong decisions in so many different ways that, you know, I was hurting my family over a relationship, you know. But all I can do now is just try to make it all right, keep pushing forward, and not looking back into the past, you know, not even future tripping, you know. I gotta stay grounded, I gotta stay humble, I gotta live in the moment. I'm about ready for some more coffee. I've been on here for 4 to 8 minutes. I'm gonna try to go an hour. You guys even care to hear me ramble on for an hour? I mean, it is what it is. You know, and I think writing in that book's helping a lot too. Just kind of letting it go. You know, starting to write a book about my life. And I started writing another book about the canoe journeys that I was a part of this summer. You know, and I need to start writing more into that one. You know, because that was quite the adventure. And I mean, even if I was to start writing it tomorrow, it's not like I'm going to forget much about it, because that's something I'll never forget anytime soon, because it was a life changer. Every part of it, every step of the way, every time that canoe touched the water. I do miss the water. I do. That was it was amazing. The sights, the smells, the water. It was beautiful. I will tell you one thing from that, though. From that, it was in the open ocean. It was before we actually come up by Clown Bay, or up by Nia Bay, and come into the Straits of Juan de Fuca. We ended up, the fog had broke, because it was really foggy that morning when we had left. And what's up, Pierre?
I'm heading down to Lower Village real quick.
All right, be safe.
I'll be back in like an hour.
Okay. What? And the fog had lifted. I would kind of like to share